Hello and welcome to Spy Hard's podcast. I'm Agent Scott.
And I'm Cam the Provocateur, pretending to know how to read a sonar.
Could you let us know?
I need help. I'm really useless right now.
Listen, are you a sonar user? Are you listening to this podcast? Is that Venn diagram crossing over? We want to hear from you. Contact at spyhards.com. We want to know how to read that sonar. But that's beside the point. We're continuing our celebration of the Spy Who Loved Me. It's July Who Loved Me. I'm still not sold on that tagline.
Well, it's a one time only, so that's all that matters.
Well, it's many times only over the month, actually.
True. But next July won't be the case.
Yeah, there's no more love for Spy next July.
That's right.
I couldn't think of any more rhymes. But, we're here with another interview. We promised you, Cam. Who are we talking to?
Yes, we are talking to actor Garrick Hagon, who appeared in The Spy Who Loved Me as a member of the USS Wayne, took part in a lot of the action scenes with Roger Moore as well on the Liparus tanker, but also is someone who's appeared in many other spy films. He appeared in Spy Game. We'll talk about his appearance in Mission Impossible, the Brian De Palma film from 1996, and also had some other credits along the way, like Red King, White Knight, for example, the 1989 TV movie that we are tackling, or I think just did tackle on the Patreon.
Yeah, a little bit of synergistic marketing there, and I do like the fact that you called him Hagon. I'm pretty sure it's Hagon. Is he Hagen-Dazs? Hagon-Dazs? Who knows? That's a mystery we're going to find out right now. From A New Hope to Conclave, from The Spy Who Loved Me to A Spy Game. He's a man of many talents. It's the one and only Mr. Garrick Hagon. Hello, sir. How are you?
Hello, I'm fine. The one and only. Yes, there are not many Garricks in this world.
It's a great name. I love it.
Yeah, and I keep being asked by luminaries who remembered who David Garrick was. Like Olivia, he asked me, but why did I name? I said I didn't name myself. My father named me. He passed the theater on the way home from the hospital, and that's true.
Mm.
And he wanted a one-word name. He didn't want a middle name. So there I am. And while I'm talking about Sir Larry, I have his Confessions of an Actor biography, and he signed it for me. We were rehearsing. I was so lucky to get this. It was a television that I was brought in late to replace Pierce Brosnan, because I think either Pierce was, I don't know. His wife may have been ill, or maybe she was having a baby. I don't quite know. But anyway, it was brought in very late. And I got this part with Angela Lansbury and Olivier in it. There was a television that Olivier did with Angela and Hildegard Neal. And it was called A Talent for Murder. And I was just so bloody lucky to be able to watch these people at work. And I went up when he was having his birthday, and I look back on that, and I think, God, good Christ, I look back now thinking he was as old as I am now. I couldn't believe it. But there he was, sitting in a chair on the side of the rehearsal room, and I asked him to sign his book. And he didn't spend a lot of time thinking what he would write. He wrote to Garrick, "For auld lang syne," and affectionately, Larry. He said, "There's a little joke here." And I said, "Well, what's the joke?" And he said, he just shook his head. So what he was doing really was sending a little note to David Garrick, the famous actor. And later on, when he passed away, he was buried in Westminster Abbey, very close to the tomb of David Garrick, who was the prime actor of his generation,
Mhm.
and which Olivier thought he was too, and then quite rightly so.
Well, we've learned a lot in that there, because you also filled in for Pierce Brosnan by the sounds of it on there. Is that how you were called into that that TV movie there?
Well, as a Canadian director,
Yeah.
he might have known what I was around. I don't know. It was we were doing it in, I think, American. Olivier was doing his American, yeah. And Angela Lansbury was, I think. I can't remember. Anyway, I certainly was. I wasn't a very nice guy in that either, but I wasn't a spy.
Which I think brings us beautifully on track. Thank you there, Garrick. I mean, we're here this month. We're celebrating The Spy Who Loved Me, but we're also using this as a sort of a foot in the door to look at your career, because you've been on so many different spy TV and spy movie projects that I think we probably won't do it justice in this discussion. But I think we start off chronologically, and that's going all the way back to a very big year for you, which is 1977. Star Wars happens, and I think we'll talk about that in a minute. But The Spy Who Loved Me also happens, and you're down credited as, and I kind of want to get into this because the credit is interesting, as the USS Wayne crewman.
Yeah, I imagine I was probably the lowest rank on the submarine, and I don't know what the lowest rank. I think it's seaman, or
I think so.
yeah. Anyway, seaman. I could give myself any name and sign that if you like. I it was a cold Christmas, and I had a whole bunch of people in my house, and my in-laws from Canada, and we were. I thought, well, I better get working. I better show that I'm a working actor, and I took this and thought I really shouldn't be doing it, because I'd just done a fairly big part in a huge epic with Anthony Quinn and Irene Pappas and everybody, a huge film for 13 months. And I'd done it recently enough to think, I probably shouldn't be running around as a seaman, lowest rank on submarine. But I thought I better take the job. And I'd do that. I'd take the job if it can offer anything at all. And there we were for 6 weeks in the tank at Shepperton, I think, or was it Pinewood? One of the two.
I want to go with Pinewood, but I think you were there, and the film you were talking about before was The Message. I assume is the one.
Yes, it was.
About. Yeah,
it was The Message, and it's still around. And in fact, they re-digitalized it. Malik,
Wow.
the director's son, just a while ago, and we had a premiere in Dubai. That was a tribute to his father, Mustafa Akkad. And as I say, I was on that with a totally international cast and crew for 13 months. And it was a great education in a lot of things. But anyway, The Spy Who Loved Me, there I was running around as seaman.
Well, that's kind of, so let's dig into The Spy Who Loved Me. It's interesting you say you're coming off of The Message, massive epic, as you say, 13 months working on the project, to doing, I think, a few weeks, I would imagine, on The Spy Who Loved Me in total, comparatively.
Yeah, I thought we were sort of booked up before and after Christmas. I can't remember it exactly, but I think it was around 6 weeks altogether. There and back, the crew was running around a lot. And in fact, one of the episodes on that involved a lot of us that were in the crew, probably the American crew. But it was pretty dramatic. I mean, it was the one day that I remember, and it was a scene in the control room. We were all in the control room above the submarines, and there was a gantry, and you could run along the gantry and look into the control room, but it was full of people working on various pseudo instruments. And it was to be blown up. And we were already, miming our particular tasks. And they said action, and boom, the whole thing went up. And it caught the plastic canopy above us.
Mm-hmm.
The explosions were all set in barrels, pieces of cork in barrels, and they all exploded individually, one by one, and it caught fire. The whole canopy caught fire, so it was a very dangerous situation, and a lot of people were hit by bits of cork. Some of them rather badly. Somebody lost a bit of an ear and kidney. My friend was hit in the kidneys with a cork, and there were various people not well at all. And apparently the story goes that the special effects man was down in the Caribbean or somewhere, but he delegated the task of looking after the effects. Anyway, it was a bit of a confrontation. The actors finally got together and said, we are not happy, and I know we're all extras, but never mind. We would like to make sure there's nothing like this again, and how much are you going to compensate us for? So it got really rough at that one particular stage.
Wow.
I don't know whether you've heard this story from other people on the book, but it was the most dramatic remembrance I have of that film.
Well, I remember there was certainly someone in that scene that was, I think it was like melting plastic that landed on someone and burnt them quite badly. So that was in the control room when it was under attack. I assume that's the scene you're talking about. So you were in there working one of the stations.
Fortunately, I thought, wait a minute, this could be dangerous. I'll stick with Roger. Roger is probably going to look after himself very cleverly, and probably I'd be best to stick with him. And I did. He got out onto the gantry early, and I was right there beside him practically. So I was not badly off at all. But some of the others were,
Well, that actually leads me to one of the lines of questions we wanted to talk about with The Spy Who Loved Me, because USS Wayne Crewman, Wayne Crewman is actually the name of your character, by the way. That's actually what I've decided. You are Wayne Crewman. Congratulations.
I'm on the USS Wayne. I was the inspiration for the name.
Right. It was named after you. Were such a great crewman or seaman. They named it after you. So congratulations on that. So if I ever meet you in person, I'll get you to sign something saying from Wayne Crewman.
Wayne on the Wayne.
Yeah. So because I've seen a couple of stills of you on the actual sub, but were you part of the big sort of attack scene where everyone running around with fake guns and sort of storming?
Yeah, somebody found a photograph actually of me. I said, there's not. I tried not to be seen. That was the whole object of me being in it. I was running up. I would always try and be the last to pick up my gun. And he said, no, I have a photograph. And it's true. This is just about a month ago, I was doing a signing, and he came up and he said, this is definitely you. And I said, yeah. But it's only my shoulder, only the side of my head. I left the lines to, I think Bob Sherman got a lot. He got and I said, I don't want to. I'll pick it up last. I'll come out last, knowing that they'll cut away before.
Well, I was going to ask just about working on that enormous Ken Adam tanker set, what it was like as an actor just to be in that environment.
Yeah, it was. Well, it was smelly. It smelled of carbonite, whatever but you really couldn't get rid of that smell. It seemed to be with us for ages after. I think there was another tank on a film I was dubbing, and another use of that tank. And was it Legend? I can't remember. Anyway, yeah, it did. It stayed with you. We played a lot of poker in the rooms down in the dressing rooms, but you sure remembered that smell, and you could. Oh yeah, I got to be so tired of it. But it was good fun because we were all about the same age, and a lot of us knew each other. There were new friends. It was a really good group, and um, a lot of them are no longer with us. I can't hardly believe that, but it's true. And but there was at that time quite a lot of work for the Americans and Canadians over here, and we all felt just lucky to be hanging out together. And and we also were working with Roger and a very good director, Lewis Gilbert. So it was all in all a good Christmas experience. And I was able to show that I was a working actor.
When you sit down, you have your control panel in front of you. You have your assignment as the crewman. Are you just kind of like figuring out what you want to do, or are they telling you kind of an idea as to, how this technology would work at all?
No, they don't really, once you are kind of pretending to work a machine, you maybe develop your own mind and
Mm-hmm.
and work it the way you want to. The same thing happened, dare I say, with the X-Wings.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty well improvised because obviously we had no panel of instruments. We had a Texas instrument game to play with. So, yeah, I mean, you do that a lot. I guess you're making up stuff to do. I always like props anyway. I like even on radio, I like props to be doing something.
Well, you mentioned two names that I wanted to sort of touch on because neither of them are with us anymore, which is Lewis Gilbert and Roger Moore. A big director for his time, and there are many other big names you've worked with in terms of directing. But any sort of thoughts on Lewis Gilbert's direction on the set? Any sense of the guy? Any stories about that time you spent with him?
Not when I didn't get close to Roger at all. I mean, he's working on
Sure.
a set. Um, I mean, all you just knew from everybody around him and all the stories that he was a gloriously courteous and helpful and funny and all the right things. All in all, an incredible guy. My barber, my hairdresser, they call him, says he's in Chelsea. And and apparently the nice French restaurant there on the corner of Sloane Square. I mean, Roger would come in and everybody would recognize him, of course, and then he'd say, just so people would kind of get used to it, that he was there, and that's and leave him alone. And he introduced himself or said hello, went around the table and said hello to everybody, and then sat down. And then, of course, they did leave him alone and stop oogling,
Mm.
But that kind of charm just radiated from him. So, I mean, it was nice to be in a film with a star is that much of an example of how to behave,
Mm-hmm.
how a star can bring you that warmth and creativity and help, really, just the feeling that he's with you.
And I was going to ask because, when you do Star Wars, no one knows what Star Wars is. It obviously becomes an absolute phenomenon. But I can understand being an actor, you kind of go, well, I don't know what this is. Whereas when you're doing The Spy Who Loved Me, you know this is a James Bond film. What did James Bond mean to you at that point in your life?
Well, I had loved Sean Connery, and one of the first films that really, really just impressed me and influenced me, and everything we wanted to be was that kind of strength and purpose and likability. All those things were what Sean Connery represented, and it was a very good example to have. To be in a Bond film, well, I'd done Star Wars. I'd worked with a lot of people by then,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just another very good experience. Um, I don't think the way guys talked about coming on to Star Wars later, the later Star Wars, they always said, well, they knew it's mammoth job.
Yeah.
But of course, we didn't at the time know that about Star Wars. But there were a lot of films, and I've gotten walking on as a kind of non-entity in a lot of big sets, and with a lot of wonderful, stars. And you're there, uh, it's kind of nice to feel your way in, but it's nerve-wracking as well. I remember thinking, what do I did another spy film, which we haven't mentioned, a spy game.
Mm.
And I remember walking into the studio, and there was Robert Redford coming towards me. I had a little cap on, and I thought, what do I say? Well, you go through this nervousness. What are you going to do? What are you going to say? And it was not so nice and casual, and introduce yourself and so on, and it becomes you're part of a team, and so you become less overawed and relax. And again, an actor who gives a lot to his fellow actors. It's a nice feeling.
Well, let's keep it on the spy train. I know Cam has a couple of questions about Star Wars, and maybe we'll circle back to A Galaxy Far, Far Away later on. But I want to keep it on the spy stories. And in the following decade, you do 2 TV movies, A Perfect Spy, which is a John le Carre adaptation, and Red King, White Knight, which is sort of telling the Philby the whole story there. I actually put my hands up. I haven't seen Red King, White Knight. I have seen a bit of The Perfect Spy.
No, I haven't seen it either.
Right.
Oh, well,
fair enough.
I could join. 3 out of 3.
Okay.
I sort of remember films according to the location, and that was in Hungary.
Mm.
And I didn't know why, because it was a company I'd sued. And I wondered why it was on it at all. I'd been in a film in Canada in which I was injured
Right.
under some helicopters, and I thought, after I sued them, I thought, oh no, I'll never work for them again, but I did. But I remember a boardroom, and that's about it. A lot of boardrooms, a lot of suits. Spies tend to start in offices, and
It's funny because you do Spy Game like 15 years later. That's also in a boardroom. Full of people in suits.
Yeah.
Well, let's jump another decade ahead then. Let's talk about Brian De Palma and Mission Impossible, a film rebirth of a beloved TV series at the time. It's now in the next few months going to have its 8th movie out. Crazy.
Yeah.
How did that all come to be for you getting involved in Mission Impossible?
Yeah, I think I went out to meet the casting director. I never met Brian De Palma because he didn't shoot the scene I was supposed to be in. I walked on the set, and there was an old friend from Canada who had starred in a series called The Forest Rangers that my brother had also starred in, my brother Rex. And it was nice to see him, this friend, and a very respected Canadian actor. Who went to Hollywood later. He did the series in Canada and went to Hollywood. But I did this CNN reporter on Sunday morning on the steps. I had to go up 6 steps. And then with my microphone, I'm interviewing him and sticking the microphone in front of his face. But one way or the other, we did this about 9 times. They kept saying, it's getting late. They're going to open the doors. You can't film anymore. And the actor was having trouble. I mean, he was having trouble with the dialogue. And one way or the other, I don't think we ever shot the scene. We got it, but it wasn't right. And I have, your heart goes out, you try everything. I said, put up a sign. They put it way up here with the words on it. Why did they put it up there? His eyes are looking up. Okay, do it again. And they tried everything, and it just didn't work. So that scene is never on. Why? How the kind of them to give me a credit.
Who? I mean, just out of curiosity, because the scene's never seen the light of day. Who was it you were interviewing?
Oh no, I don't want to reveal that.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Fair enough.
Light.
Trade secrets. I see.
Yeah, I'd rather not. I mean, gosh, I did another scene. I did another film called Scarlet, the follow on from Gone with the Wind. And I just had one scene. We had to learn to dance and all that. We did all that, and another actor friend again from my work in Canada. She was in it, but had trouble, and she just never got it. But I think I'm probably still in a scene dancing with. I wasn't dancing with her, but it was a scene in which she had trouble. You hate to see it. It's very difficult, and I've just been. I'm reading. I've had very late in the day Alec Guinness's book, and he talks about retiring. I think at the last book, autobiography he wrote, and he talks about actors going on a little too long, like maybe me. And he talks about it being painful to watch. He didn't allow himself to do that. I think he bowed out gracefully, and in time. It's a very difficult decision to make because a great actor like that, you want to keep working.
Definitely.
Well, in my heart, you will always be in Mission Impossible 1996.
I'm glad because it certainly looks good on the credits, on the post. They put up posters in conventions. What this is probably I shouldn't be mentioning this deflating story.
It's human. It's human.
It's human, and just to know that people, because people talk, and that's what they're asking about. They're asking about these difficult moments.
You got to shoot in front of the Tate Modern. It's a building Cam and I have been to before. It's a lovely building.
Every time I go in that Tate Modern, I'm remembering that. CNN reporter. That's right. That was a CNN, so it's all their fault. CNN.
One day we'll get the Hagon cut where your scenes are put back in. And,
well, thank you. Put
hashtag release the Hagon cut. There we go.
Well, I think they can put Greedo back in, and with a gun. I haven't talked to Paul Blake about what's happening with this Greedo episode, but I think they're showing the original cut because Paul always swears at the solo shot first. So we'll see what happens.
One of the great controversies in film to this day.
Well, keeping it on the spy train, a few years later, Tony Scott, Spy Game.
Oh, Tony Scott! I mean, he was such fun because he sort of came in and whooped or something and made it wow, and you sort of felt like you'll wake up and go, and it was just just a lovely guy, and we sat around that table quite a lot too. Another boardroom. I don't know how many days, but we did sit around the table again with Robert Redford and a terrific cast. I never met Brad Pitt, but it was a nice Larry Brigman, just terrific guy, and I worked so hard that I did so much spy reading before. I read about famous American spies and or infiltrators in the CIA, and I had all this dialogue just in case he asked me to improvise on. I was the head of the CIA, and I thought I'm going to have to get some technical stuff. And I came in with all. He said, "Okay, I'd just be talking as you go into the scene," and I started off with this technical thing about so and so, where's he posted, and what's he going to do? And he said, "Where'd you get all that?" I said, "Well, I've been reading a lot." No, he said, "Don't throw that away. Talk about the golf game you had or something." So, so here I thought, but he was a lovely, lovely guy, Tony. Yeah, I had a privilege of working. This was with Ridley later, much later, in a pilot that for a series that really never got made, except I think they put it out as a one-off feature. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Called The Pope's Slippers, I think it was called in the end, because it was made after, kind of in the background was Pope Benedict, the idea of Pope Benedict, and it was a clever, funny, ingenious script, and again a cast to marvel at. But that was again in Rome, and it's sad that it was never shown in a big way.
Mm.
Because Conclave then now has come along, and it would be an interesting contrast to see that film with Kyle Chandler playing a young priest who's I think he becomes a cardinal or wants to become a cardinal, or he is sent to Rome. But I was involved in a sequence where he's confessing with his confessor in New York.
Mm-hmm.
That was called, I think, The Pope's Slippers, and then eventually it was called something else. And then I don't know the title because I never saw it, and it was never shown in a big way.
Well, I was going to ask just about Tony Scott. He's such a distinct visual filmmaker. If, when you're working with him, if there's things you notice that seem different than other sets you've worked on.
Well, because they were both commercial, he spent a lot of time, well, in my sequence, I mean, he spent a lot of time with his storyboards and would be drawing and things like that, and planning shots, I presume. But I didn't do any of the action stuff that he's so good at. I would sit around the table.
Yeah.
So with me, it was very, very work-a-day. It wasn't the exciting stuff that came later in the film. But he was just a genial and interesting man. He'd done his research, and he knew what he wanted, like any good director.
Mm-hmm.
And he made you happy on the set, it seemed to me. But again, when you're working in a very specific area, that's your focus. And the scene was not complicated in my respect. It was from Robert revealing what he had to reveal. You don't, it's very, it's a short relationship. All you know is whether you're at ease and discovering what the scene's about, what you're supposed to be, what your action is. So your focus is on that. Again, it wasn't a terribly personal relationship. It's professional.
It's funny though, like Scott and I, we review spy movies every week on the show, and how many movies we cover where it is, men around a table talking about, the problem or the issue. And how many of these scenes fall flat, whereas like with Tony Scott, there's like an electricity to all of them that just feels like it just comes to life. Whereas like in another movie, the talky scenes would be the slow moments.
Yeah. Well, you see what I mean? When he would go, he just pepped you up. It was like I think it was a very difficult time personally for him, because I think it's one of his mother or was either ill. Anyway, it was a difficult time, but he didn't reveal all that to us, or not to the group of us. But he did energize. That was his great quality.
And let's also not forget you're sharing that big old wooden table with Robert Redford, a man of many talents and a director in his own right as well.
Yeah, and again, there was only a few brief conversations, and he asked me why I was here, why I was working in England, and you know, I said, well, it provided a lot of opportunities and a lot of uh, different countries, a lot of interesting people, and I learned a lot from all my, uh, the times that I'd worked with great English artists and in theater with great directors and in film with very good, some of the world's top directors. And I appreciated. I was able to tell them all that. Um, I just, we were just actors talking about our career. He didn't talk about his. I do about his, but it was just again an unassuming but magnetic presence.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
Agents, we don't expect you to talk. We expect you to buy a subscription to our Patreon.
Yee. That's right. Over on the Spy Hards Patreon, we're covering all your favorite spy TV shows, as well as popular films from the most iconic secret agent actors of all time.
Cam, why don't you share some intel on our latest assignment?
Scott, they say a man's got to know his limitations, but he should also know his strengths. And one actor who always knows his strengths is Clint Eastwood. And this week we are taking a look at the 2008 drama Gran Torino. Is this late-era Clint vehicle still worth the ride? Or does it hit too many potholes along the way? We're gonna find out.
So deactivate Ghost Protocol and visit patreon.com/spyhards to truly do things angel style.
But before we close Channel D, on with the Spy Jinx.
Well, you mentioned great directors, and I think that skips us on to the next film 5 years later, 2006's Black Book.
Oh, Black Book, yeah.
Paul Verhoeven taking a break out from Hollywood to go back to his native country to do the film. But you star as British generals. It's a quick scene towards the end of the film, I believe. But any sort of thoughts on the experience of putting that one together?
Yeah, well, my experience in that particular scene was how, and I really should remember her name. She became, maybe you know it, the
Carice Van Houten?
Carice, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And what she had to go through in the scene I was doing with her, a very big scene when she's sort of tortured by having a bucket of what appears to be from the latrines thrown over her, and what she had to go through. And I wondered why they weren't treating her better and making her do it so many times. But the Dutch actor, I didn't know them. I didn't know the Dutch actors very well at all, except that we ended up all together in the same caravan. And so I got to know them better. But he said to me, she's going to be a star. That's why she's doing it, and she's not complaining. And she was very brave, I thought, and did, in fact, become a big name.
Mm-hmm. But it's quite a visceral scene. It's probably one of the most memorable from the film itself.
Yeah.
Was there any reservations from you sort of being involved in that sort of thing, or are you happy to, if it suits the story and it's sort of purposeful?
No, no, and I like Paul Verhoeven. Later he came over and we had quite a bit of time. We had to redo the sound. I don't think he liked the sound in the warehouse and all that stuff. But no, he's very gentle. I didn't remind him of this, but I had dubbed as a film that he did earlier on called Spetters, I think it was. A very controversial scene, but I dubbed the actor going through a horrendous torture, and that I guess he had a bit of torture and sadomasochism. Anyway, no, but the story was brutal, And I dubbed the actor when he was being brutally treated. I won't say in what way, but those who know Spedders would know that. Um, but Paul Verhoeven wasn't there for this particular scene. I was just volunteered, or I said, "Yeah, sure, I'll do it." I did a lot of dubbing in those days.
Right, right. And like what was sort of your take on Paul Verhoeven? Because, you worked with him for a little bit, but just like, you talk about kind of great directors. We talked about Tony Scott. What was it about Paul Verhoeven that maybe seemed unique?
Well, I was surprised how gentle he was, and that because of all the sort of heavy stuff that he'd done. But friendly. Uh, again, you don't get to know them that well. They're not buddies.
Mm-hmm.
We were doing a job and we were correcting the sound. And I think he had to shift studios to do the dubbing because one of them wasn't right. So he's very particular. And the film was very telling. Obviously, I mean, he could do. Could he do Das Boot? Is it Boat? Das Boot?
No, that was Wolfgang Peterson.
Yeah, Peterson. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But to go from Spedders and then to where he ended up with this very compassionate film, Black Book, he is a wealth of a very whole man, very, as I say, gentle and clever.
There's one more film in your sort of spy filmography that I feel we would, if we missed it, I'd be remiss. And that is about 10 years later, you do Red 2.
Oh my God, you're clashing dances. I'm on the right. I'm on the the non-spy side.
Sure.
I did that in Canada, and I did that. I actually, it was a good experience to be in Canada. I hadn't been back for a long time. I'd gone back to do theater, but I hadn't gone back to do film, and it was really nice. Just to be in Montreal. I'd worked in Montreal on the film that I got injured on, and I just sort of had a really grim experience of that Nowhere to Hide. I think was that cool? I think it was. John Colicos was in it. Anyway, I had done one film that I had rather painful memories of, not because of the film itself, but because of the accident. And then this was a fun film. I liked it was brutal but fun, and I had then worked in Brussels. Was it on that one? We shot back in London. I think we worked back in London. So it was again just a nice scene. I thought. Again, I was looking at props and I thought, they have grapes on this set. I think I'll be eating a grape. And the director seemed to go along with that. So I was a cruel boss, and I forgot the name of the actor. I just saw him recently in Yellowstone, who was beating up a Canadian actor that we all knew. But it was it was a fun day. It was a fun day, and then we had fun days over here. And it was a film that I didn't expect to be such, a joy. I didn't meet Malkovich, and I really Bruce Willis at all. But I enjoyed the film somehow or other. Anthony Hopkins, hadn't worked with and didn't know, but we did spend a lot of time sitting in a tent. Was that it? I kind of mix it. Anthony Hopkins was doing a mad kind of.
He's like a scientist, I think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
From Red 2. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. He's like locked up in a prison and then he breaks out and he's kind of, I think, the baddie of the film, ultimately.
Yeah, that's right. But I had as soon as I met him, I felt I knew him because, again, my hairdresser, he had lived right on opposite him and went to the hairdresser. And I immediately said, well, Stephen sends his love. And he said, oh, thank you very much. And then later on, he said, who did you say?
Not a memorable barber then, I assume.
And so at the very end of the filming, when I'm killed off on the plane, I think I die. He said, you died awfully well. And he said, who sent their love? He said, a lot of people sent their love, and they don't know you. And I'm sure he knew Stephen, but it was just many years ago, and probably it was a different time before he became Sir Anthony Hopkins.
Which connects us back to Mission Impossible, which was Anthony Hopkins' pick of that you were almost in, I suppose.
And then I'm almost in. Yes.
Well, that's like the bulk of the spy movies. I know Cam had a couple of questions about the Star Wars, so I'll hand over to him.
Oh, Star. Yes.
What was sort of the process of getting the job? Because at the time, Star Wars is an unknown quantity. What does it mean to book Star Wars?
Well, none of us knew what Star Wars was, and I'm probably one of the few people that got a full script right away, fairly early on, because Mark was always hired and Harrison in Hollywood, and so over here, but as I said, there was a group of American and Canadian actors, who would be called up because he wanted to. A bunch of us, and I didn't know really what it was. I didn't know much about George Lucas, so I went in fairly blind. Except she said he doesn't talk much. Casting director, and she said you'll probably do the talking, and I said, yeah, fine. So I didn't read a script then. We didn't talk about parts at all. But I think I talked about the film I'd done on The Message, the work I'd done on The Message, being in the desert, wearing the costume. And curiously enough, what I did end up wearing a costume that had a cape, a lovely black cape.
Yeah, of course.
Very sort of more like the costumes we had in Morocco, and a lot of the Berbers who were working on the film as extras wore those capes. So on what we call the cutscene, this was all in the future. Nothing came up talking, but I did describe the heat and working in the heat, which I was well accustomed to by the time I finished The Message. I don't remember anything that George might have asked me. I can't, he probably asked me general questions. What have you been doing? And so we were marked on, as I always say, we were marked. Apparently, he was marking us out of 10, and we got our little marks. And so I guess Biggs got quite a good mark. I always say, I think it was 7. I was told maybe. I really laughed. The casting director said. Anyway, I was eventually, and not fairly quickly afterwards, offered the part and got the script and tried to figure it out. And I never really did. I remember doing a television. I was doing a television at the time and throwing it on the desk and saying, I don't know what this is about. What am I going to do? But I think it might be exciting. I think, and it's in Tunisia, or it's in Morocco. I can't know, Tunisia. And the lady I was working with, Kate Nelligan, she said, no, I think I want to get you to go up for this. I know somebody who's directing it. And it was about Shakespeare, and I thought, oh, good, Shakespeare. But then, fortunately, I chose Star Wars. And again, when when I arrived there, I knew just as little about the script as I could glean. I met Mark right away. He came out of the motel where we were staying in Gerba, and so great to see you again and all that. And I said, "Oh God, it's tough to learn these lines." He said, "It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. You can say pass the peanut butter. It's okay." I said, "It wasn't okay. We had to learn the lines as it was written, and some of them were quite convoluted in the cut scene, telling the story of the rebel, the beginning of the rebel alliance, and so on." So eventually I learned them, but we had a lot of fun. Mark and Anthony Forrest and Koo Stark, the gang who were on Tatooine. Jay Benedict, we'd done a scene in London, but he wasn't with us on the shoot at Anchorhead in the mosque on a kind of promontory in Gerba. Anyway, we learned them and we did the scene, and the rest is history.
Well, what was your response to, you've shot the movie at the time, no one knows what they're making, to seeing the finished product on the big screen?
Well, we were shattered. We just could not. Well, we had no idea what they had been doing in Hollywood, and no idea, as everybody said, it had such an impact. If you come into that film with absolutely no preconceptions, and then saw the work that they'd done and how it had finally appeared. So it was. We were at a cast and crew showing, and it was just overwhelming. Like everybody says, it's hard to imagine what the reaction that people tell me they had when they first saw the film was equally strong. So everybody, once the screen, the role started and we got into the film, we were mesmerized. Absolutely. I don't remember. I talked to Gary Kurtz sort of after, directly after, but I didn't. I don't think we talked to George. I don't know whether George was at the cast and crew. But all of it was. Well, I don't think any of us thought we were going to shoot to history and going to be talking about it 50 years hence, but it was pretty remarkable to feel that we were wandering around in that film and, seeing our battle scene encompassed by all this brilliant editing and the whole atmosphere. It was
And you eventually got your own action figure, so you're immortalized right there.
Well, I got more than one. I got so many that turning them out. There's another one. Somebody just sent me for kids of like under 5 or something. Magic Marcus or something. There are a lot. And in fact, there are a lot of things that I discovered people bringing up to show me. And new cartoons, new drawing books, new stories. It's amazing having that kind of spin-off.
And just quickly, one thing I want to ask you about before Scott wraps us up here is if you had any memories just shooting the opening sequence of Tim Burton's Batman, playing the father of the family that's mugged.
That was one of the big experiences. Because I was with my wife for a start. I was with the boy. The boy happened to be I'd been in a play for 9 months on the West End, All My Sons, Arthur Miller, and we were like a family anyway. I knew the boy. He wasn't my son. My son had an English accent, and Tim said, "No, it has to be American." But the set was so fantastic. the atmosphere of that opening night, my first night on the film, and bowled me over. There were beggars on the street that I thought they'd actually brought from the center of London and plunked them on the set and paid them um, for authenticity. So you had steam coming out of the sidewalks, and then you thought, this is impossible. It's just too real. So and Tim was a long way away on a crane. I think we just had no trouble. I think he said, "Oh, say what you like." I think a lot of it's in the script, but I think we were improvising a little bit as well. But it was very exciting. It was almost as exciting as the opening of Star Wars, when we saw that. But this was actually we were in it, and then the scene following with Chris Fairbanks and getting killed. That was another night, but that was another episode that my wife particularly enjoyed screaming and being mauled by these two thugs. It was a terrific opening, I thought, and I liked Tim. Again, it's nice when a director exudes kind of faith in you, when you feel you're in good hands and you're in appreciative hands. And so it was one of those films. And eventually I kept the hat, didn't I? The makeup, I said, I want to get the hat. And I got the hat. And they also gave me the can of spray that Jack Nicholson used on his hat. Oh, it was great. I'm great. I'm very proud to have been in Batman, and so is my wife. I feel, people don't come up often to talk about it, but it's there and it's good. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned people coming up, and one thing we were talking about off air, the three of us, is conventions, and you're a big attender of conventions. And what is it about going to conventions and sort of meeting the fans that keeps you coming back to it?
Well, just the fact of being welcomed by so many people and around the world that they're traveling, and the fact that there's all this love about that they feel happy that you feel you're giving something that they have come to enjoy, and it's a nice interaction. I don't think any of the actors can quote bad experiences, not very rarely, experiences that aren't pleasant. And I guess it's nice for actors to be appreciated by the fans in the flesh. And so we appreciate them, and actually, yeah, we owe a lot to them. That's who we. The community that is built up is so enormous, and especially the 501st and so on. It's so heartwarming to know that a lot of this is directed towards charity, but they're not doing any harm, and they're they're enjoying what George produced, and it's continuing, and I think it'll just go on for the rest of my lifetime, and certainly many more.
We interviewed someone a few years back now who was in the original series of Star Trek, and that also is one of those things that just sort of has a lifetime in conventions, and she has attended a few, and she couldn't wrap her head around why people go to conventions, and I think Cam and I tried to sort of explain it, but I boiled it down to just sort of the fact that it's about being joyous. It's about celebrating something. You don't find negativity particularly in those places. And in a world where everything seems to be negative outside of the walls of your house,
Yeah.
it's nice to go somewhere where everyone's just happy about something.
Yeah, exactly. And it's nice to be able to feel you give something back just by being there. That's a
Mhm.
very easy thing to do, just to be there. But it's enjoyable.
Last two questions, and then we'll let you go because it's been gargantuan going through your spy movie career. And speaking of films and perhaps TV, we talk about going to conventions and people will talk about Star Wars and things. But what film or project that you worked on during your career so far do you think has been the most impactful?
Most impactful. Oh, certainly Star Wars has had the most impact. It's like a reverberating bell. It'll just go on and on. So that's impacted my life in some way. It's not taken it over because I do a lot of other things, and one of them that I enjoy is directing, and from this area here, directing down the line and directing in person, and a lot of wonderful things have come my way. But impactful film, you know. I'd give the credit to the first one I did. Um, to them, uh, one of the greats. I know he's not. He has a difficult relationship with later on history. But Charlton Heston, I did my first film with him, and um, I guess I was starstruck. But I just felt honored to be there, to be treated so well. He gave me every shot that he could possibly give me. Then the part was, um, it was a part that is of Eros, his slave, who is and incredibly close to Antony in Antony and Cleopatra. And it was an honor to get it and then to work towards it. I did all the building up, supposedly. I tried. Chris Plummer and I were working in the same little gym in Earl's Court. Um, he was doing another film, and I was pretending I could look good in a tunic.
I bet you still do.
But it was such an honor to work with again a gentleman, somebody who knew his Shakespeare, who had this wonderful presence, and was so considerate to his actors, and knew his stuff. He did.
As you mentioned, of course, that was Antony and Cleopatra, and you also starred in that with a former guest of the show, Julian Glover, who is a Bond alumni himself.
Julie,
Mm,
terrific. Yeah, he was terrific. He was terrific on that, and he's been a friend ever since.
great chap.
Yeah, very, very lucky. Well, it's a great cast. I sat down for lunch. No, we were having dinner, and the first day on the film, I was sitting beside Fernando Rey, and opposite the Carmen Silvera, and the I just it was in heaven. And then Chuck said, "Would you like to do your death scene tonight? I can't shoot in the harbor." And that was my first scene, and I learned it. I'd spent a lot of time doing Shakespeare, and I felt I was on safe ground because I'd been at Stratford in Canada so many years, and my very first outing on stage with Alec Guinness was, at Stratford, to which I owe so much because that's where it all began. So,
Well, the last question we have for you, and this is, we never give anyone prep. This is always a out of the
no, and I
blue.
don't think of, but I always say, don't say too much.
I like surprises. It's fun. But every single person we've had over 100 interviews on the show, we ask this question, and I'm always fascinated to hear the answers. So I'll put it to you. Garrick Hagon, what is your favorite spy movie of all time?
Oh, the one that Tom Hanks did. I call it the
Bridge of Spies?
Um, but only maybe because it's the most recent. I mean, there's some terrific ones, James Mason and um, um, another lady I had the pleasure of, Claire Bloom. Um, but yeah, Bridge of Spies sticks in the memory. I suppose again, I love Tom Hanks. I think it's great.
And Steven Spielberg. You can't really go wrong.
Yeah.
It's one of our favorites. We've been lucky enough to have the writer of the film on the show over the years talking about it, and now you put me on the spot. I want to say Matt Charman.
Yeah, that's right.
That I pulled that out of nowhere. That's a back of my
nice
mind.
The way that some of these memories come.
Yeah, a film I'm very fond of. So picking Bridge of Spies, a lot of people listening to this will be very happy with your choice. A man that's worked on many spy movies, and picked a pure spy movie, I would say.
Yeah, I think of the setting and everything else, because I've been there and so on. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, the spies, I kind of let you down. You've got a lot of
There's no letdown.
Just not there.
There's no letdown. We learned that you were hanging out in Roger Moore's shadow when you were infiltrating it in Spy Who Loved Me. We've got stories about the almost scene from Mission Impossible. What more could people want?
What more can they ask for? What?
Are you not entertained?
Exactly. Garrick, it's been a genuine pleasure speaking to you. We wish you all the best, and thank you for spending the time with us.
Thank you very much, and all the best to you. I'm your 101 guest here.
There you go, folks. That was Mr. Garrick Hagon, our third Spy Who Loved Me interview in the bag. It's a murderer's row this month.
And I think of all the people we've interviewed on the show,
Ever?
yes, Mr. Hagon was the first actor who I knew who they were in my life.
Wait, what? So you had no idea who, Luciana Paluzzi was before you interviewed her?
No, I mean in terms of, in my life, at the earliest age, I think Garrick Hagon was the one I knew who it was first. Because if you think about it, I discovered Bond when I was 8, 9, 10, whatever.
Uh-huh.
I was watching Star Wars at the age of 4. So I knew who Biggs Darklighter was at a very young age. And I remembered his big, very tragic death scene. That was imprinted in my mind at such a young age. Whereas all these other actors we've talked to, or directors, or all these people, they were all people I learned about later down the road of my life.
So if anything, this is the one you've been waiting for the longest.
This is circling back to almost the very beginning. Yeah.
Which is, ironically, almost the very beginning of recorded time.
It was 2001. I remember, pounding the ground in front of the monolith.
The space baby was you.
I was hurling that bone in the air.
And then you got arrested.
That's true. That was very an unfortunate incident. Let's move on. Let's move on.
We don't talk about this. Let's talk about The Spy Who Loved Me. And, I did make a joke about his character name in the episode, which I quite enjoy. That I hope that does stick now.
I would hope so.
Wayne Crewman. What a great name.
I know. You can't do better.
I'm pretty sure I've met someone called Wayne Crewman in my life.
I know several.
Ah.
I have to basically index them because I know so many.
Yeah, you have them saved as Wayne Crewman 1, Wayne Crewman 2 in your phone. It gets quite confusing.
There is a Cam Smith on X who actually created a Twitter account or X account many, many, many years ago that only included Cam Smiths.
Right.
And I am a member of this very exclusive crowd.
And what do you guys talk about?
Nothing.
the strife of being Cam.
But I will say, whenever I post a link to something, he will promote it on the Cam Smith only account.
Well, then I guess I want to thank the other Cam Smith for doing more work than our actual Cam Smith for promoting Spy Hards.
Thanks, Cam. You're the best.
Unlike our Cam, who isn't.
I do what I can.
I think I can count on my digits the amount of social media posts you've made in the last 5 years of this show.
Oh, Jesus. Moving on.
Spy Who Loved Me. So we've got Wayne Crewman, and he's talking about, just some of the craziness on the Liparus sub and that big shootout scene. And he's trying to stay out of trouble because he's shooting something afterwards, doesn't want to get himself injured. And it just goes to show how very different things were in 1970, I guess 6 or maybe 7 compared to 2025.
Yeah, you get the sense that, like, look, there was no fatalities on the set of The Spy Who Loved Me, but you get the sense that it was a little more wild and woolly when it came to pyrotechnics and action and these, like, grand scale assaults like we see in the film that, things happened. Things happened. It didn't have necessarily the increasingly strict safety protocols we have in action movies nowadays.
And ironically, those safety protocols still aren't saving everyone.
No, not at all, no.
You still hear about fatalities on sets. You just look at the Rust thing recently, stuff like that. Very tragic stuff. But like, there was almost like a roll your sleeves up and just get involved attitude back then. You just got to get on with it. If you're in this scene, you're going to get hit with the odd explosion. And I guess that's maybe that's what you train for in acting school back in those days.
I don't know if it's the actors so much as the stuntmen of that era, too. It's like a little more of that cowboy mentality. You see it chronicled, of course, in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but there's all these stories of these older stunt guys where it really was kind of like, they were like, who's willing to get hit with like a board? You will? Awesome. Join the team.
Yeah, it probably explains why I never had a career in stunts.
Yeah, and definitely not something I was going to be picked for either.
Yeah, I'm a fragile man. Fragile beta cuck of a man.
You're in a body cast on the best days.
I'm a bubble boy.
That's right. Moops.
And there's a couple more Spy Who Loved Me stories we talked about, but Garrick's career is huge. Like, he's still acting now, still going. He was in Conclave like last year. Crazy.
Yeah, and it was interesting to hear him talk about Spy Game, a movie we've chronicled a lot on this podcast, and I always am interested to ask actors about these great directors and what separated them. When you're actually working with them day to day, what was it about them that made them unique? And he talked about, like, Tony Scott just being this ball of energy and would come in and be like, woo, let's go! Like, he genuinely was like someone who was like, he understood that basically these sets can be boring. People can get tired or get weary, and it's just like, there's a lot of waiting. And Tony Scott was a guy who was always trying to keep people kind of amped up, and that comes across in his movies, which are always high energy.
I mean, I have an image now of all of the actors in the boardroom scene from Spy Game doing a conga line around the table, in between shots, just to keep the energy up.
Totally. Yes, I imagine that too. And he also had very kind things to say about Robert Redford. We've talked to so many people about so many famous icons, but I don't think we've ever heard a single negative thing about Robert Redford. Not even anything alluding towards anything, just in terms of, like, not being the nicest or whatever. Like, you don't hear anything like that. He seems like just the most, like, consummate professional and very gracious dude.
Yeah, it's one of those, but then it's one of those things in Hollywood. Like, a lot of people don't want to talk ill of some people.
Sure.
Unless they're really bad. So I don't tend to... Actually, I take that back. You think about, like, the people who've worked with Roger Moore on the show, and that have been on our show that we've spoken to. Never heard a bad word about Roger Moore. Now, Roger Moore is no saint, if you pardon the pun. But well loved. And yeah, I do get that impression about Robert Redford as well. And, that was we had the same question when we had Dan Mindell, who was DP on Spy Game many years ago on the show. And, he was saying about, you've got, award-winning director Robert Redford in your film. And, he's taking notes, but he's also giving advice when asked, and he's being very courteous. And it must be quite hard for an actor to work alongside Redford at that point, a director to direct Redford at that point. He made the entire process very easy.
Who do you think we've chronicled more on this show, Tom Cruise or Robert Redford? I feel like Redford we've talked a lot about because of Sneakers as well.
I feel like Tom Cruise intersects with more people.
Yeah.
But we haven't had as many Mission Impossible interviews as I would like. I probably should focus more on those sometimes. So yeah, it probably is just an actuality in terms of numbers, Robert Redford, but I don't think Tom is far behind.
What I noticed too is people tend to have very specific stories about Robert Redford, like a moment where they kind of related on a human level. Whereas with Tom Cruise, it really is much more of he was very professional, very focused, always prepared. You kind of hear those like types of buzzwords thrown around. You don't hear these like, oh, I remember a moment where he asked me about my kids or something like that.
Well, I mean, not to hinder our future chances of interviewing Tom Cruise, because I would like to think one day we will. But like, I've seen enough PR interviews with him to know he's a very intense guy.
Yep, totally.
And it feels very prepared. And I've heard him on like shows that are friends of ours, like Light the Fuse.
Mhm.
And, he has a lot of stories about Mission Impossible. He's very passionate about those films. But everything he says is very calculated.
Yes, 100%. It's very like highly media trained, yeah.
Yeah, you compare that to like some of our like loose off the hip ones, like Wendell Wellman or Mitchell Lieb or something like that.
Rest in peace, Bruce Glover. One of the great interviews.
Yeah, I think our only interview guest of all time to die so far.
I think so. Yeah, I think that's the case.
Yeah, so far. Touch wood. I mean, we're all going to die at some point, so I don't know why I'm doing that. But yeah, it's the opposite with Tom Cruise. So I would love to have him on, but I almost could, like, I almost, a part of me wants to get an AI generator and generate the conversation with Tom Cruise and just say it's our interview, because I imagine it would sound very similar.
Here's a question: who would you can only get one, Tom Cruise or Robert Redford? Who's the one you go for?
I think it's Tom Cruise. I think his films have meant more to me over my lifetime than Robert Redford films, personally.
Right. I think I would go Redford because I think his stories are going to be better.
Well, I'll do the Tom Cruise one. You do the Robert Redford one, and then we technically stick to our rules.
Oh, okay.
But we end up with 2 interviews.
There we go. Boom.
You're all getting magic here. And we're meant to be talking about Garrick Hagon.
Well, let's get back to him because, I was saying earlier that I was very familiar with him because of playing Biggs Darklighter in the original Star Wars.
Sure.
And
yeah,
Star Wars is a movie that obviously means a lot to me, a lot to people all around the world. And once again, it's such an honor to talk to someone who actually worked on the original film. Like we've only had a couple.
I think it's our second or third maybe that has done that.
We haven't had many. Yeah, exactly. And so to be able to just talk to him about the experience of, not having any real sense as to what he was doing, kind of making it up the way he was on Spy as well, the instrument panel in front of him in Spy versus the X-Wing cockpit, just kind of going like, I don't know, I'll do the best I can, having the opportunity to be in this, kind of crazy project as a Canadian actor working in Britain and going, okay, well, don't know what that was, but, it was fun. And then seeing the finished film and just being like, what is this? Oh my God.
It's crazy. You do hear that with a lot of these franchise films that people just stop by and really understand or grasp what they're getting themselves into.
Mm-hmm.
And then their choices have gone on to influence so many other people.
Yeah.
Like, I bet there are people who fly in X-Wings. Like, there's a new, like, Ryan Gosling Starfighter film coming out that I'm pretty sure he'll be in an X-Wing for.
Probably, yeah.
And I imagine they'll teach him how to fly an X-Wing. But they're taking those movements from people like Garrick Hagon, who was just going, I don't know, bleep, bleep, bloop, bloop, woo, X-Wing, shoot, shoot. And that was like, became the gospel.
But also, it's interesting, too, for an interview like this, because we talked to Paul Hirsch, who edited Mission Impossible and Ghost Protocol, and was one of the editors on Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's someone who's there assembling it day by day. He sees kind of the evolution of that film in a way where he goes, I understand what we have here, and we understand what we're turning it into. Whereas for someone like Garrick, who shows up and shoots, a chunk of days, most of that footage doesn't wind up even in the movie. All the stuff on Tatooine all hits the cutting room floor. But, shows up, does his time on that project and moves on, and then sees what kind of the ambition and the grandiosity of this project actually was on the big screen. That must be just like mind-blowing.
Yeah. I think nowadays it's probably a different beast. I think like if you sign up an actor to be in a Marvel film, like,
they know.
get it.
They know what they're getting. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas this was uncharted territory. And this was, Star Trek had been on the screen since the 60s. It had been science fiction since way before that. 50s, it was science fiction films, science fiction serials. But this was really the big blockbuster sci-fi.
Mm-hmm.
the first of its kind, really. Like, you can point out some other things that maybe it led to. But, yeah, like, that X-Wing stuff, the day he probably shot in the X-Wing, compared to actually seeing the trench run and seeing all of that stuff, like, that must have been pretty mind-blowing in 77.
Well, you think of like the original actors from Jurassic Park.
I often
So,
do.
Sam Neill, Sam Neill, Laura Dern, all those people, seeing those dinosaurs come to life at the first screening, they must have just been completely like mind blown as to what they were seeing. They would have seen the animatronics on set, but you're not seeing them integrated the way you are in that finished film. And then you cut to like Scarlett Johansson doing, Jurassic World Rebirth. Not the same level of awe when she's seeing that finished product. She knows exactly what it's going to look like.
And yet, audiences still keep going to those films.
Dinosaurs, man, they will always show up.
I don't get it. Honestly. I'm not going to spin this conversation off into something else, but we can talk about this another day. But I really don't get the appeal of those Jurassic World films.
If you had two screaming kids who just want to go to the movies, you'd be like, give me the dinosaurs over like Trolls 5. Speaking of other blockbusters that really did change the form, Garrick also talking about the sets of Batman, working on Tim Burton's first Bat film. I mean, incredible production design on that film. That was Anton Furst, who died shortly after that film, so that was kind of his final major project. And I mean, as he talked about just being on those streets and feeling like he lived in that world of Gotham. And he is, for those that don't remember, I'm not sure it comes across specifically in the interview, but he is at the very start of that movie. He's with the family that gets mugged in the alley, and it's kind of a fake out because you think it's Bruce Wayne with his parents, but it's not. And he was the father there, and he worked with his wife in the scene as well. And just like him talking about that world, because I was always in wonder of the Gotham that Tim Burton created. And it's great to hear an actor who's been in countless projects still was wowed filming that sequence.
I mean, this was really your interview, wasn't it, Cam? You're like, I mean, I hope you're all at home with Cam on this one, with sort of the joy and the jubilance that's coming through from Cam's voice here. This is his childhood encapsulated in a lovely hour interview.
That's right. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's a great connect the dots of classic films with Mr. Hagon.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we hope you've had a good time with it. The ride hasn't finished yet.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few more stops on the July Who Love Me. And I was teasing earlier this month there might be something special coming up. So this Friday, we might have something special for you. We're cooking up. I'm just going to leave it there. If it happens, it happens. It doesn't, it doesn't. But just make sure to dial back into your Spy Hards feed this Friday and see what appears from the darkness. But next week, the final interview from The Spy Who Loved Me, Cam. Who do we have topping it off?
We are talking to stuntman Rick Sylvester, who was responsible for the iconic parachute opening of The Spy Who Loved Me. He's the man who skied off that cliff and pulled the ripcord. He also, in addition to that, had the big fall sequence on the cliff in For Your Eyes Only. So we're going to talk to him about those iconic Roger Moore stunt moments.
Yeah, there was even like a part of the interview where he realized he hadn't told a story about a certain thing and asked us to come back in and record an extra story and put it into the interview. He was that, excited to tell us this story. It's a very exciting interview. At the time of recording this interview, it was the first time he'd ever done a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very exciting interview coming your way. It is flying off of the precipice. He's about to pull the ripcord and land in your podcast feeds. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, you beautiful people, is to join us for our final week of the July Who Loved Me as we speak to the man who gave us the Union Jack parachute. It is the one and only Mr. Rick Sylvester. You're going to love it.
Nobody does it better.
Quite right. And if you've enjoyed this chat with Mr. Garrick Hagon, let us know over on social media. Join us at SpyHards. That's SpyHards, wherever you get your social media. You'll find us lurking around there, probably talking about Spy Game or Spy Who Loved Me. Superman just came out as well. That's done really well. I'm probably talking about that. He just said, Corin Sweat just said he's a massive Casino Royale fan.
Yeah,
So
that's right. Yeah.
that was good to read. I enjoyed that. He's a big Bond nerd. Maybe I'll have to knock on his door one day as well. And speaking of knocking on the door, I can't segue that one really well, but I'll do it anyway. Come and knock on our door at patreon.com/spyhards. Bag yourself over 100 bonus episodes in your podcast feeds. We're talking spy TV shows like Andor and Slow Horses, Killing Eve, and also a bunch of films by your favorite spy actors. Also, you can put your requests in for films for us to review over there as well on Patreon, patreon.com/spyhards. But until next week, folks, Cam and I are off to form a conga line with Robert Redford.